Bismillah walhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. So the last class, we took a summary of the issue with regard to those who try to basically argue in falsehood when it comes to the issue of the Quran being created. And as Sheikh Salih al-Fawzan, he mentioned that when it came to this issue of the Quran, this test rather, that took place specifically in the time of Imam Ahmad, the people were being tested as to what their position was with regard to the Quran being created or not. Specifically the scholars at that time. And Imam Ahmad alayhi rahmatullah, he was one of the scholars that remained firm, and he didn't waver. He didn't compromise his religion to appease even the rulers at that time. And because of this, he was punished. He was beaten, he was lashed, he was imprisoned, so on and so forth. And we mentioned the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ in this regard. The people who are tested the most are the prophets, then the righteous, then those who are most like them, then those who are most like them. So according to the level of a person's faith, they're going to find that test in accordance to how strong their faith is. So the stronger a believer is in terms of his faith, in terms of his religiosity, then his test is going to be greater. If a person is weaker in Iman, then his test is going to be on a lesser scale. There's another issue that comes up before we even continue, and that is not being tested. When a person is not being tested, trials and tribulations are not coming a person's way. This is not a good sign. In general, this is not a good sign. It comes in the hadith, it's collected in the Musnad of Imam Ahmad. And likewise, it's found in Adab al-Mufrad of Imam al-Barbahārī. And Shaykh al-Albani, alayhi rahmatullah, he authenticated this hadith. عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه قال جاء أعرابي. So it was narrated by Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu. He said that there was a Bedouin Arab who came. And he came to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. فقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم هل أخذتك ملدم. So the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, has mildam affected you? Has mildam affected you? قال وما ملدم. So this Bedouin Arab said, what is mildam? قال حر بين الجلد واللحم. It's heat that's between the skin and the flesh. It's heat that's between the skin and the flesh. What do you think that means? A fever. قال لا. So he said no. قال هل صدعت. So the Prophet ﷺ then asked him, have you had a headache? قال وما الصداع. So this Bedouin Arab said, what's a headache? Right? What's a headache? قال ريح تعترض في الرأس تضرب العروق. The Prophet ﷺ said, it's a wind that's inside of the head and it hits the veins. قال لا. So he said no. قال فلما قام قال من سره أن ينظر إلى رجل من أهل النار أي فلينظره. So the Prophet ﷺ said, after this individual got up and he left, whoever wants to see a person from the inhabitants of the hellfire, meaning, let him look at him. Let him look at this person. So the meaning of this hadith is that one of the signs of a person having Iman, a person being upon the religion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is that he's going to be tested a lot. He's going to be tested with regard to his family, He's going to be tested with regard to his health, right? His wealth, his children, so on and so forth. And this is in general. And we know for believers, when a believer is tested, that this is an expiation for his sins. This is a means of expiation, and likewise, it could be a means of his status being raised with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in general, if a person is not being tested, he's not getting any type of test. And we see in this hadith, this individual who came to the Prophet, alayhi salatu wasalam, he didn't even know what a headache was because he never had one. So it's not a good sign if a person is not being tested. So this is an encouragement, inshallah, for us, who, for the vast majority of us, right, we're constantly going through things on a daily basis, right? Going through calamities and hardships. This is a sign, bi'idhnillah, a good sign that, inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants good for us. But nonetheless, the point of this, of mentioning this, was to point out the great calamity and hardship that Imam Ahmad alayhi rahmatullah went through to defend the religion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? He was tortured, he was imprisoned, and it wasn't for a personal reason. As some people, they claim that Imam Ahmad, his differing with the people in his time was a political reason. Right? So it was connected to politics. This was not the case. He remained firm because he wasn't going to have any type of concession when it comes to the issue of the Quran being the speech of Allah and that is not created. So tonight, we're going to continue. We're going to finish the explanation for this part that we've been taking for the last 2 or 3 weeks. قَوْلُهُ وَنُورُهُ قَوْلُهُ وَنُورُهُ. So his statement, the statement of the author, Imam al-Barbahārī alayhi rahmatullah, وَنُورُهُ, and it is his light. Al-Quran يُوصَفُ بِأَنَّهُ نُور. The Quran is described as being light. The Quran is described as being light. قال تعالى وَلَكِنْ جَعَلْنَاهُ نُورًا نَهْدِي بِهِ مَنْ نَشَاءُ مِنْ عِبَادِنَا. In the verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, the meaning of the verse, however, we have made it a light by which we guide whoever we will from our servants. وَيُسَمَّى رُوحًا. And also, the Quran is called ruh. For the brothers who have been coming into the class, we've been dealing with this word right here, ruh, for maybe 2 or 3 classes now. So far, one of the meanings of ruh that we've taken so far is what? The regular soul, a person's soul. The soul that's inside of a person's body. What else? Jibreel, alayhi salam. So likewise, وَيُسَمَّى رُوحًا. So likewise, the Quran is called ruh. It's called ruh. That's another meaning of ruh. أَوْحَيْنَا إِلَيْكَ رُوحًا مِّنْ أَمْرِنَا. And this is from the same surah that was just mentioned. And we have revealed to you a ruh from our affair. روح لأن القلوب تحيا به. So the Quran is called ruh, and we translate it loosely as a spirit. It's called this because it gives life to the hearts. كما أن الأبدان تحيا بالروح. So just as the bodies, they're given life by way of the soul. فهو روح القلوب. So therefore the Quran, it is the spirit of the hearts. Alright, it's the ruh of the hearts. وَالْرُوحِ الْمَعْرُوفَةِ رُوحُ الْأَبْدَانِ. And the well-known soul is the soul that's inside of the bodies. فَهُوَ نُورٌ. So therefore the Quran is light. وَهُوَ ruh. And likewise, it is ruh. It is the spirit. وَهُوَ هُدًى. And it is guidance. وَهُوَ تَذْكِرَةٌ وَمَوْعِظَةٌ. And likewise, it is a reminder and it is an admonition. وَلَهُ أَسْمَاءٌ كَثِيرَةٌ مِمَّا يَدُلُّ عَلَىٰ عَظَمَتِهِ. And likewise, the Quran, it has many names that indicate and show its greatness. قَوْلُهُ. And his statement, لِأَنَّ الْقُرْآنَ مِنَ اللَّهِ. And this is because the Quran is from Allah. وَمَا كَانَ مِنَ اللَّهِ فَلَيْسَ بِمَخْلُوقٍ. And whatever is from Allah, then it cannot be created. Allah Jalla wa Ala بِأَسْمَائِهِ وَصِفَاتِهِ لَيْسَ بِمَخْلُوقٍ. So Shaykh Fawzan, he says, Allah Jalla wa Ala, with his names and his attributes, cannot be created. فَهُوَ خَالِقٌ وَغَيْرُهُ مَخْلُوقٌ. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the creator, and everything other than Him is created. فَلَا يُقَالِ So it's not to be said, إِنَّ الْأَسْمَاءَ وَالصِّفَاتِ مَخْلُوقَةً It's not to be said that the names and the attributes of Allah are created. لِأَنَّهَا مِنَ اللَّهِ Because it's from Allah. وَمَا كَانَ مِنَ اللَّهِ فَهُوَ غَيْرُ مَخْلُوقٍ And whatever is from Allah, it cannot be created. بِمَعْنَى أَنَّ اللَّهَ يُوصَفُ بِهَا And this is because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is described with these names and these attributes. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is described as Al-Alim, right? The all-knowing. As-Sami', the all-hear. Al-Basir, the all-seer, and so on and so forth. These are attributes that He is ascribed with. فَاللَّهُ بِأَسْمَائِهِ وَصِفَاتِهِ خَالِقٌ So therefore Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with His names and His attributes, He is the creator. وَمَا عَدَاهُ فَهُوَ مَخْلُوقٌ And everything other than Him is created. قَوْلُهُ And His statement, وَهَكَذَا قَالَ مَالِكُ بْنُ أَنَسْ وَأَحْمَدُ بْنُ حَنْبَلْ رَحِمَهُمُ اللَّهِ And this statement, that the Quran is the speech of Allah and is not created, it was also stated by Malik ibn Anas and Ahmad ibn Hanbal. What do you think is the purpose of Imam al-Barbahārī mentioning this right here? That this statement, the fact that the Quran is the speech of Allah and is not created, this was also the statement of Imam Malik ibn Anas and Ahmad ibn Hanbal. And then after that he mentions something else. I'm going to leave that part off because it's kind of obvious as to the reason why he mentions this. But what do you think is the purpose of why he's saying this? This was also stated by Malik ibn Anas and Ahmad ibn Hanbal. What's the purpose?
It's not precedent.
Exactly. There's a precedence. So we know Imam Malik, rahimahullah ta'ala, he preceded Imam Ahmad. But these are from the four well-known Imams. Abu Hanifa, Imam Malik, al-Shafi'i, Imam Ahmad. Right? He only mentions two. But nonetheless, these are from those same four well-known scholars of Islamic jurisprudence. So it shows it's a precedence. He's not coming with something new. هذا قول الأئمة. Right? Shaykh Fawzan, he says this is the statement of the scholars. ومنهم مالك إمام دار الهجرة والإمام أحمد. So, and amongst these scholars is Imam Malik, the Imam of Dar al-Hijrah. Dar al-Hijrah is Medina. And Imam Ahmad, الذي عذب على هذا. And this has already preceded. Imam Ahmad, he was punished for this. He was punished because he refused to say that the Quran was created. وَأُوذِيَ رَحِمَهُ اللَّهُ وَصَبَرَ. And this Imam Ahmad, rahimahullah ta'ala, who's given the laqab, the nickname with right, the Imam of Ahl-Sunnah, he was punished and he was patient with that test. وَغَيْرُهُ مِنْ أَئِمَّةِ أَهْلِ السُّنَّةِ And other than them from the scholars of Ahl-Sunnah. هذا قولهم. This is their statement. قوله ومن قبلهما من الفقهاء ومن بعدهما. And likewise the scholars that preceded them and the scholars after them. يعني لم ينفرد الإمام مالك والإمام أحمد بهذا. So this means that it wasn't just Imam Malik and Imam Ahmad who said this statement, that the Quran is the speech of Allah and it's not created. بل قال به من قبلهم من الصحابة والتابعين وأتباع التابعين. Rather, those who preceded them, the first and the best of this ummah, of course, the Sahaba, then the Tabi'een, then Atba' al-Tabi'een. Those three generations. That the Prophet ﷺ praised when he said, خَيْرُ النَّاسِ قَرْنِي. The best people are my generation. Right? He's talking about the believers. ثُمَّ الَّذِينَ يَلُونَهُم. Then those who follow them. ثُمَّ الَّذِينَ يَلُونَهُم. Then those who follow them. He says, وَمَنْ بَعْدَهُمْ مِمَّنْ جَاءَ بَعْدَهُمْ مِنَ الْأَئِمَّةِ. And likewise those scholars who came after them. قَوْلُهُ. And this is the last portion right here. وَالْمِرَاءُ فِيهِ كُفْرٌ. And disputing and having an argumentation about this is disbelief. الْمِرَاءُ فِي الْقُرْآنِ هَلْ هُوَ مَخْلُوقٌ أَوْ غَيْرُ مَخْلُوقٌ. So this is with regard to debating as to whether or not the Quran is created. أو أن الإنسان يتشكك ويقول ما أدري. Or a person, he has doubt and then he says he doesn't know. Like if a person comes to you and he says, what is your position regarding the Quran? Is it created or not created? And you say, I don't know. That's also disbelief. That's also disbelief. For a person to say the Quran is created is disbelief. But for a person to have doubt and say, I'm not sure if it's created or not, that's also disbelief. Al-mas'ala khilafiyya. This is what some people say out of ignorance. They say this is the issue of differing. This is an issue of differing. They make it as though it's an issue of Islamic jurisprudence. Whether or not you put your hands down first when you go into sujood, or you put your knees down, or you put your hands on your chest after you come up from ruku', or if you put it to the side. They make it an issue like that. That's not what this is. This is an issue of creed. This is a fundamental. It's not the same. But this is what some people say. Ma adri. They say, I don't know. Al-mas'ala khilafiyya. They say it's an issue of differing amongst the scholars. كما يقولونه الآن. As people are saying now. فقد ظهرت ظاهرة الآن. So right now there's a phenomenon ظاهرة الآن يقولون المسألة خلافية. Right? People are saying right now that this is an issue of differing, whether or not the Quran is created. فنقول عند الاختلاف المتبع الدليل. So we say to the people who make this statement that if there's differing with regard to an issue, what are you supposed to do in that situation? You follow the proof and the evidence. For every issue, almost every issue, especially when it comes to Islamic jurisprudence, for the most part, it's always different. You can find, for example, one issue in fiqh. Abu Hanifa might say one thing, Imam Malik says something else, Imam al-Shafi'i might agree with Imam Malik, Imam Ahmed, he differed with him. Almost in every or most issues of fiqh, there's differing amongst the scholars. So whether it's an issue dealing with creed, or even if it's an issue dealing with Islamic jurisprudence, what are you supposed to do? You follow the proof and the evidence. And then he mentions, we don't worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala based upon, the differing of the people and based upon the statements of the people. Right? We worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala based upon proof and evidence. فَنَعْرِضُ الْخِلَافِ عَلَى الدِّلِيلِ. So we present the differing, this differing before the proof and the evidence. مَا قَامَ عَلَيْهِ الدَّلِيلِ فَهُوَ الْحَقِّ. Alright, whatever is based upon proof and evidence, then it's the truth. If it's based upon proof and evidence from the Book of Allah and the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that's what we're supposed to do. مَا خَالَفَ الدَّلِيلِ فَهُوَ الْبَاطِلِ. Whatever opposes the proof and evidence, then it's falsehood. وَاللَّهُ لَمْ يَتْرُكْنَا لِلْآرَاءِ وَالْأَخْوَالِ وَالْخِلَافِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He didn't leave us to, follow the opinions of people and the statements and the different of people, right? One person thinks is good, another person might think is bad, and vice versa, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't leave His creation like this, that we just go with the flow, basically. What this person thinks is good, I'm just going to follow him because I look up to him, he's an Islamic speaker, and so that's not how our religion works. We don't go based upon just the opinions of people and the views of people. A lot of people, they say a lot of things that are in clear opposition to the religion. So it's not about opinions or views or just statements. بل قال, rather Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said regarding this issue, فَإِن تَنَازَعْتُمْ فِي شَيْءٍ فَرُدُّوهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَالرَّسُولِ. If you differ concerning anything, فِي شَيْءٍ, it doesn't matter what it is, anything, then return it back to Allah and His Messenger. And likewise he says subhanahu, وَمَا اخْتَلَفْتُمْ فِيهِ مِنْ شَيْءٍ فَحُكْمُهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ. And whatever you differ concerning, فَحُكْمُهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ, then its decision is to Allah. ذَلِكُمُ اللَّهُ رَبِّي عَلَيْهِ تَوَكَّلْتُ وَإِلَيْهِ أُنِيبُ. That is Allah, my Lord. I put my trust and my reliance in Him, and to Him I turn. فَيَجِبُ الرَّدُّ إِلَى كِتَابِ اللَّهِ وَسُنَّةِ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ وَسُنَّةِ رَسُولِهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ. So what's obligatory in this situation, right, is differing going on regarding an issue, whether it's connected to creed, or even if it's an issue of Islamic jurisprudence. Some people are saying it's haram, some people are saying it's halal. What you're supposed to do, what's obligatory, is that you refer that issue back to the Book of Allah and the Sunnah of His Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. فَيُؤْخَذُ مَا قَامَ عَلَيْهِ الدَّلِيلِ. So you take what is based upon the proof and the evidence. وَيُتْرَكُ مَا خَالَفَ الدَّلِيلِ. مَا خَالَفَ الدَّلِيلِ. And whatever is in opposition to the proof and evidence, then it's abandoned. You leave it off. وَأَمَّا الَّذِي يَأْخُذُ الْقَوْلِ. And pay attention to this point. Pay attention to this point. وَأَمَّا الَّذِي يَأْخُذُ الْقَوْلِ الَّذِي يُوَافِقُ هَوَاهُ أَوْ شَهْوَتَهُ وَلَوْ خَالَفَ الدَّلِيلِ فَهَذَا ضَالٌ. As for the person who takes that statement or that opinion or that view that it agrees with his desires and his lust, even if it goes against the proof and evidence, then this person is astray. This person is misguided. هَذَا يَعْبُدُ هَوَى. This person in reality is doing what? He's worshipping his desires. He's worshipping his lust, his vain lust. أَمَّا الَّذِي يَعْبُدُ اللَّهِ فَيَأْخُذُ الَّذِي قَامَ عَلَيْهِ الدَّلِيلُ مِنْ كِتَابِ اللَّهِ وَسُنَّةِ رَسُولِهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ. As for the person who truly worships Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then he takes that which is based upon the proof and evidence, is established upon proof and evidence from the book of Allah and the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wa ala alihi wasallam. And this last point that he's mentioning about a person, taking views or taking opinions that agree with his desires. The term that we use in this day and time is fatwa shopping. Fatwa shopping. A person, for example, goes to Google, and some people they call it Sheikh Google, right? And they'll look up an issue, right? And for example, they know, perhaps the majority of scholars say it's not permissible, but a person goes to Sheikh Google, right? And then he'll look it up, and then he'll find, a statement that's shadh, right? It's an issue or an opinion or a view that's weak. And we mentioned this issue before, the issue of music, for example. Right, the scholars have mentioned that there is consensus. It's not just, Imam Abu Hanifa or Imam Malik or Shafi'i and Imam Ahmed. No, it's consensus amongst the scholars that it's not permissible. But for example, a person will look it up, go to Google, right? And he'll say, so-and-so from amongst the scholars said it's permissible. Right? This is fatwa shopping. And this is something that, unfortunately, in this day and time, because of the internet, many Muslims there are tested with this. Right? For example, it could be an issue even amongst the scholars of Ahl-Sunnah. Some of them are saying it's permissible. Some of them are saying it's haram. Let me ask you a question. If an issue like that is presented to you, some scholars are saying it's haram. Some scholars are saying it's okay. What are you supposed to do in that situation? No, it's a gray area. It's something that's doubtful. So if you're not sure, then you should stay away from it. That's the origin. The Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned about doubtful affairs. The person who leaves it off, he safeguards what? Dinihi wa irdihi. He safeguards his religion and his honor. His religion and his honor. But if a person is just constantly fatwa shopping, looking for, rukhas, right, concessions for almost every issue, you'll find maybe even a scholar who says something is permissible and really it's not permissible. So if you were to do that, you're going to go astray like that. So it's not about the statements of scholars or the views of men or anything like this. It's about following the proof and evidence that's based upon the book of Allah and the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wa ala alihi wa sallam. Now, and with that, that concludes the explanation for this point. The next point, inshallah, we're not going to take it next week. Sheikh Umaysan is going to be here. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, he's going to give a lecture series in Masjid al-Tawheed in Kissimmee. So we encourage all the brothers to take their families and to go benefit, inshallah. And then the class for next week is going to be cancelled, and then after that, inshallah, we'll continue. نكتفي بهذا القدر. We'll suffice with this for tonight. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم.